Let's see how this goes on Instagram. We'll just wait a few minutes for everybody to join us. I'm watching it to see if it, oh, I have to push go live on Instagram. There we go. You guys hear it echoing?
No, not at all.
Okay. It's reverberating for me. So anyway, if you're watching, okay. I'm put. Can you guys still hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I got to turn that up some. I can't hear you now. All right. So we're going to go ahead and get started. If you're watching on Instagram, just make sure that you click horizontal so you can see the whole screen and see each one of my mamas. If you're watching on Facebook, shouldn't bother you much. Hopefully you guys aren't hearing weird noises because I'm hearing a reverberating. So if I get tongue-tied, that's why. So I'm so excited for everyone to join us today because I've got 4 of my students here with me, and they represent such a wide range of birth stories and birth journeys. And I just want you guys to get to know them because one of the really amazing parts of our membership is that Taylor and I and the rest of the team really get to know these mamas and they get to know us too. So I want you guys to have that opportunity. I'm going to let each of them share a little bit of their birth journey and their birth story. And then I'm going to ask them some fun questions. And if you guys have any questions for them, just put it in the chat and I will, if I have time, I will ask them. We're only going to be on here for a little bit, short time. So they all have babies, so bear with us. And my son is here sick as well. So I'm going to go ahead and start with Cassie, and I'm going to mute myself, Cassie. But I just want you to share like your first birth, your journey to having another baby, and your experience with the VBAC Lab.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on. We'll make it quick because we know I can be lengthy when I start talking about my birth journey. It's always so exciting. My first birth was twins when I was 16, 17 actually, and it was just an automatic C-section. Back then, they just said it was unsafe to have vaginal birth with twins. So, also being young, I was just kind of told what to do every step of the way. I wasn't given options. Nobody really discussed anything with me. I wasn't sure what was going on. There was a lot of fear behind it. So when we decided to have Atlas 18 years later, before I got too old to have a pregnancy, I really wanted to be super involved. And so I started looking up a lot of education courses. And of course, Trish came up on Instagram, and I was immediately hooked on the community that she was building, how other moms were in on the education, how active a lot of the partners were on the education. So I joined pretty late. I think I was part of your first Fearless Birth experience on Facebook. And then I joined the community as soon as that week was over. I was just super hooked. And then we had Atlas, I think, because I was 36 weeks. We had Atlas 4 or 5 weeks later. And there's no way I could have done it without this community because there were so many things that were trying to be pushed on me, like a scheduled C-section just because I was 35. And then that wasn't a good reason. So it was, oh, let's do a scheduled C-section because you're swelling a little bit. Well, that wasn't a good enough reason. Well, let's do it because you're a VBAC and I might not have anybody to cover your vaginal birth over the weekend. So it just became clear that it was more of a convenience thing. My husband and I came to the VBAC Lab that night to tell them what was going on. And then I was feeling very intimidated by my physician. And all of the women rallied around me and they said, "You're doing fine. You're super healthy. Go into labor how you want to." So at 41 and 5, we went into labor naturally. We did some of our pro tips to induce, but there are some tips around that, like not to do certain things. You'll have to join Trisha's class to learn those things. But yeah, so we were in labor for 3 days, went into labor, worked my hardest to get that baby out vaginally. I mean, so hard, unmedicated. I was doing all the things, but ultimately we were 9.5 centimeters for 6 hours and couldn't progress, and my cervix was swelling. And so we chose to have a C-section instead of putting Atlas at risk. So that's the short of it. It was a beautiful experience, and I probably would have been bullied into another scheduled C-section had I not been part of this group. And I'm really grateful.
I went ahead and put my headphones on so I can't hear this reverberating because it's literally driving me batty. So I guess one of the questions that I want to ask you, because when I started this journey with the VBAC lab, I thought that my VBAC students, their biggest fear would be uterine rupture. But what I kept hearing was, what if I do all this work and I go back to another C-section? And so I kind of wanted to ask you about that because you've had an emotional journey and dealing with all of that.
Yeah, your course and your VBAC lab does a really, really good job of talking about you need to give space to what if I have to have another C-section? What do I need to have in place? How do I mentally prepare myself? I'm a really stubborn person, and when I set my mind to something, that's the way it's going to be. And so I told myself, there's no way I'm having another C-section. It's not happening. And I didn't give myself space to think about that. Now, I did at the last minute do a C-section plan just in case, but I tried not to give it too much thought. And I'm really glad I had that in place because that paper was written up when I was laboring at 9.5, hunched over trying to get an epidural for a C-section. And my husband was able to just hand it to my care team. That definitely was number one fear. And I should have given it more space and more energy, just like you talk about in the VBAC lab. But I was just so stubborn that I did not.
And you know what? That's okay because it's to each your own, and you have to process it and get there how you get there. But for those of you guys who want to hear a more detailed version of Cassie's journey and just how beautiful her labor was, and I say in quotes, even though she ended up having a repeat C-section. I'm trying to find the actual episode number so I can share with them, with all of them. But if you go to the birth experience with labor nurse mama, it is somewhere on here and I'm not finding it. So I will try to find it in a second. Oh, here it is, episode 34. And what I loved about that day, and that I was watching your face and I was really watching you realize how much you loved the laboring part and how
It was
thankful you
amazing.
are. Yeah, that you didn't just
Yep.
sign up for a
Yep.
C-section,
Yep.
So I think that's important to note for all these moms who are like, well, they're afraid to give in to that. Like, what if I do it all and then I have a C-section? What would you say to them for that?
I would say first that was also my biggest fear, and it came true. But in the end, it wasn't it wasn't as big of a fear as I thought it was going to be. I had 3 days of beautiful labor at home with my daughter and my husband, and really awesome things happened in the hospital. The care team was amazing to me. They did everything they could to try and get me my vaginal birth. And so when I reflect, even on those moments, it ended up being this really awesome opportunity that I wouldn't have had otherwise had I just succumbed to my doctor trying to conveniently schedule me a C-section.
Yeah,
So,
I love that. And I really want those of you guys to hear, like, one of the things we say a lot is we can't guarantee that you'll have a vaginal delivery. So I definitely want all of you guys to like really hear that she got to have this experience that she really treasures. So thank you so much, Cassie.
yeah.
Thank you for sharing. Okay, so now let me go to Ashley. And Ashley is one of our Calm Labor
Hello.
students. Hi.
I'm hoping my dog does not bark and my baby doesn't cry.
Real life. Hashtag
Yes.
real mom life.
So I'm 7 weeks postpartum, and I was part of the Fearless Birth Experience in November. I think I was 34 weeks when I joined, so I was a little later in the game. But I found Trish through a surrogate I follow. She did your birth course. And I was like, I should probably check this out because I knew enough to get me by delivering wise, but I was like, I should probably do my homework and study up a little bit. So I'm really glad I did the experience, that whole week class. That opened my eyes to so many things that I had no clue was even possible, or just, I mean, all the options that I had, I didn't even know. And so, of course, my biggest fear was having a C-section. And I wanted to labor at home if I could, but unfortunately I had to get induced due to my blood pressure. But my care team was absolutely phenomenal. My doctor, I love her to pieces. She, from the get-go, because I had gestational diabetes and then my blood pressure was a little up. So I, voiced to her all of my concerns. Trish's class helped me kind of lay out all the questions that I needed to ask her. And she straight up told me, you're going to have a beautiful vaginal delivery. Like, C-section was not even, nothing came out of her mouth C-section wise. So that made me feel really good. But after the Fearless Birth experience, I was so confident in what I wanted and was just determined to do everything possible. And I had the most wonderful labor experience. Like, I would go through it all over again, maybe minus the epidural, because that one I was not a big fan of the epidural. But I was induced on a Thursday or whatever, and I was 1 centimeter dilated, going like almost to 2. They did the Foley bulb, which my doctor actually, that was the second one she's ever done. So I don't know if it's common, if it's that common in Kansas. I'm in Kansas, so I have no idea. But she didn't even bat an eye. She was like, okay, we'll do that. And because I didn't want the pill or anything like that. So she did the Foley bulb, and within 40 minutes, I was at 4 centimeters. And so, like, labor kept going great. I was only at a 2 or 3 pain scale with the breathing techniques Trish talks about, and just mentally prepared myself for labor and the pain. The ice trick, it was definitely a good plus practice wise. But I was at a 2 or 3 up until I hit about 7 centimeters. And at that point, it started to kind of increase. Ended up getting my epidural at 8 centimeters, stalled out for a while. And at 9 centimeters, that transition period you talked about, woo, that was pretty intense. I wanted to give up. And then, like, in the back of my head, I'm like, Trish talked about this. Just breathe through it. Say you got this. Like, my husband was like, you got this. Like, just breathe through it. And finally hit 10 centimeters and only pushed for an hour. I think the other thing that helped me too was I had a mirror, actually, so I could watch him come out, which was, I don't even know how to express how awesome that was. I got to feel his head coming out. It was amazing. But I don't know what I would do without this community. I really don't. Like, we moved here to Kansas. I don't really have very many friends around here, but all these mamas are so empowering and just so, like, knowledgeable. And they're going through the exact same thing I'm going through. And it's just, I don't know what I would do without you guys.
Oh, thank you so much. I want to really quick point out to you guys that she took charge. Can you guys hear me? Okay. I don't hear myself now. I love that you took charge and you knew the options. And I say this over and over again when I'm teaching. If you don't know the options, you don't have any. If Ashley hadn't suggested what she wanted, which was the Foley bulb or the Foley induction, she would have ended up with the medication, which she didn't want. And I love that your doctor was so incredible, especially since she's only done it twice. I guess that was her second time, which is weird, but that's a whole nother thing. But I love that she really respected you and you took charge and you were like the boss of your labor room. So that's incredible. That's exactly what I want for you guys.
Yeah, she made the point to be like, this is your birth. This is your experience. Like, we are going to do it your way until we can't anymore. So that was
Yeah,
awesome.
I love that so much. Thank you so much, Ashley. All right, Jessica. Jessica is a repeat offender around here, and I'll let her share that.
Hi. So I have two kids at home too, so it's gonna be a little noisy. I hope not too much.
No worries.
But I joined Trish, I think like 2 years ago. I had a cesarean with my daughter, which was an emergency cesarean and very traumatic for me and my husband. Um, and I knew when I got pregnant with my son that I wanted to have a vaginal birth. And my husband was not really on board with me right away. He kind of fought me a little bit with it. He's also a nurse, but he's an ER nurse, and I feel like they're all scared of women that come in with labor.
I mean,
So he
I have
didn't.
to say I'm scared of what he does too. So,
Yeah, I worked in the ER too, and I just feel like the ER is just a place where they just like kind of panic when a woman comes in and they're in labor. Um, so he kind of wasn't familiar with all of that. And then with our experience with my daughter, she did end up in the NICU, and we spent a lot of time in the NICU for a while. That was just really hard on both of us. And so when I got pregnant with my son, and I was like, I want to be back, I don't want to have another surgery. I had already had other abdominal surgeries in my past, and so I knew I didn't want more, but I wanted more kids. So I started doing research. Somehow, like I stumbled upon Trish and Labor Nurse Mama on Instagram, and I started watching all this stuff. And I went to a Fearless Birth experience, and I remember taking like the first class and being like, oh my God, this is what I want. I need to do this. And so I got out of the room. My husband was watching our daughter, and I'm like, I want to do this. We got to do this. And he was like, so skeptic. Like, I don't even think I told Trish this. He was so skeptic. He's like, this is a scam. This is how they get you. And I was like, no, I really think like this, we need to do this. And so I talked to him for a little while about it. He was like, all right, we'll do it. And so he got on board. He took every course with me. We sat through every class. He would sit and listen to like every happy hour with me. Was so invested. The coach course was like hands down like the best thing that we had, and he'll tell you that, like, he's jumped in on happy hours and like raved about the coach course, because it taught him really how to support me and how to support me through the different stages. And so as invested as I was, I started out pretty early in my pregnancy with my son. Um, I did all the things that Trish kind of talks about and tells you to do. I didn't have a doctor that was very supportive. It was multiple doctors, and they were more tolerant. Like, they'd come through and kind of be like, oh, okay, but you probably won't, and you will probably have an epidural, even though you want to go unmedicated, which was discouraging. But then, like, every week I'd jump in on the happy hour, and the other ladies and Trish would like just trump that. Like, they just stomp all those statements down. And so it really helped, having that community support. And so I ended up, I labored at home as long as possible. And I remember on our way to the hospital, it was like 3 o'clock in the morning. I told my husband, if I'm 2 centimeters when we get there, I'm going to lose it. Like, I'm going to lose my mind. And he's like, I'm pretty sure you're for.
lost you.
Oh, am I back?
Yeah.
Um, so he supported me. We got to the hospital. I was 6 centimeters in active labor. Um,
I did that.
okay, I was like, did I lose you?
I was afraid they couldn't see you on Instagram, so I
Oh,
moved it. There you go.
so it we got there. I was 6 centimeters. It was honestly like the shortest labor I'd had, because I labored 33 hours with my daughter, and through Trisha's classes and other people's experiences, I realized I did prodromal labor for probably a week before I actually went into labor with my daughter. And so that kind of contributed to everything that was going on. And So with my son, we went in, I labored. The nurses were really supportive of the VBAC. The doctor came in when it was time to push, and he kind of started pushing a C-section. My son's, he started to D-stat. Is it D-stat?
Yeah.
I messed that up. So his heart rate like kept
You
going.
mean in deceleration?
Yes.
Yeah.
He his heart rate started to go down, and they would lose his heart rate every once in a while. So the doctor kind of started, I don't know if he started to panic, but he was like back and forth with my husband about a C-section. And my husband was like, "We got this far. She can push him out. It's going to be okay." And he really got into like reading the monitors and things like that. So having the education he had prior and then what Trish provided really helped. And he helped me push out this baby in like 20 minutes. So I had my son, and he was perfectly fine. He did struggle a little bit in the beginning just because he had a double cord around his neck, which my daughter did too. So he came out not breathing right away. But as soon as they took him over to the bed and put him on the bed, he like started breathing, and it was good. So my experience was awesome, and I don't think I would have gotten my VBAC if not only if I didn't take the courses and have that to back me with the education, but the support of my husband knowing all of those things and being able to coach me the way he did, because I'm pretty sure at one point I was like, okay, let's just have a C-section again in labor. And he was like, oh no, it's time to push that baby out now.
Transition.
And so he
Here we
knew.
go. Yeah.
So it was good. And I'm excited because this time around I come back and like am refreshing on all the courses because you have them for a lifetime. And that's really nice. But I've jumped back into the happy hours and the community. And, you know, I've had some other challenges with this pregnancy because now I'm struggling with gestational diabetes, which is completely new for me. And struggling with a doctor's office that I don't like because I moved states. So now we're transitioning to a different doctor's office with the support of everybody in the VBAC lab and with Trish and Taylor. So that's extra help because I don't know that I would have changed on my own without the little bits of push.
Yeah, we're giving you just a nudge.
Yeah.
Not exactly a push, but I'm
Yep.
super proud of you. It takes a lot. I'm trying different layouts so we can figure out what's going on. It takes a lot of courage to switch providers during your pregnancy. It's a mental block more than like the actual work of it, but there is some difficulty when it comes to switching providers. But I've never had a student really regret that. So I think it's a really important move because being supported with your provider, like even Cassie can say, I'm thinking like, hold on, let me go back to the other view now that I did that. For Cassie, like I would say, if you had non-supportive providers, do you think you would be able to walk through and find peace with the cesarean decision as much?
You know, the only reason that I think that I found as much peace as I did is the provider that I was seeing that everybody tried to tell me to get rid of, but I was too intimidated to, ended up not being on call the weekend I went into labor. And I got an amazing physician that was so supportive every step of the way. And so knowing that he was doing everything for me to get a vaginal birth at the end when we chose a C-section, he still was like, I'll let you keep trying if that's what you want. I just want you to know here's the risks. Whereas I did not have that kind relationship with my established OB. So yes, you're correct.
Yes, good. I thought so. Well, thank you so much for sharing, Jessica. Let me go to Laura now. And I'm switching views, Laura, so that you're front and center. So if you want to go ahead and talk, you'll notice that you'll come front and center because the view on Instagram is very wonky, just so everybody knows. Because it's vertical and we're horizontal, it's just weird. But a lot of people are sticking to it. So that's good. All right. So Laura, go ahead and share your story.
Hello, all. So I was about 20 weeks, and this is my first baby, so first time mom, and I had no idea what I was doing. I thought I could wing it, and a friend of mine is actually the one who found Trish for me. So she's on Instagram and said, you know, maybe check this out. So I did the meet and greet, and I loved it. I loved everything that she was offering, and so I joined the Calm Labor Confident Birth. and it was an incredible experience. So I was about, like I said, 20 weeks pregnant. I'm a huge procrastinator, so I really did the course closer to about 30 weeks. And it helped me feel, not to sound cheesy, but calm and confident going into this. So I labored with midwives at a birth center. So, and I had a water birth with my son, and it was an incredible experience. I was able to labor at home until I was about 6.5 centimeters. The midwives came to me, checked me, said we're good to go, went over to the birth center, and it was unreal. If I were to have another child, I would absolutely go there again. It was absolutely incredible. So my best friend was our doula, and she was really a source of sanity for me because my husband was exhausted because he was up with me all night while I was in that early stage of labor. So you feel it, um, but the baby wasn't going to be coming for several hours still. So my husband was able to sleep while my friend was with me, coaching me through everything. So she had also had a labor unmedicated at the birth center. She had the birth that I wanted essentially. So she knew what I needed based on what her needs were at the time when she had her son. Absolutely epic environment. So when we got to the birth center, like I said, 6.5 centimeters, it was this huge purple room. They had a queen size reclining bed, a huge water tub, walk-in shower, fireplace. Like it was really, really, um, really fancy is the best way I can describe it. And I'm not one of those girls that's like, ooh, I need fancy things. So it was a very relaxing environment to be in. My midwife did, however, eventually try to push me to have my water broken. I was about 8 centimeters. By this point, I was actually progressing quite nicely, but it had been several hours. So she told me, what about we start looking into this? She showed me the hook, and I just really didn't want to. So I actually said the phrase, I don't want anything done out of convenience or curiosity, which is what is said in the course. So that really stuck with me. And that was kind of my mantra to get me through avoiding unnecessary interventions. And let me be clear, if they were necessary, I absolutely would have done them. But the time frame being long wasn't enough for me to want it. And my water actually broke while I was in the tub. And then my son was born maybe about hour and a half later. And it was the coolest experience. My husband got to pass him to me. I was able to feel the entire process. Like I said, it was unmedicated. And yeah, super intense and barbaric noises came out of me. But I had a picture perfect birth. So yeah.
I love that so much, and I'm glad you didn't go into some of the other details because I'm gonna ask some fun questions in
Oh
a
gosh.
minute, and some of them, Cassie, are going to be geared towards your like cesarean mamas because we have a lot of belly birth moms that watch, and I've really lately we've been trying to focus a little bit more attention on them because I think a lot of times. We forget that this is birth for them. And I love to celebrate that. And not only is it birth, it's major surgery too. And you guys are asked to do a whole hell of a lot. Like, I can't imagine any other area of the hospital a surgical patient being asked to then care for a helpless human. Like, it's like, what? It's crazy. Anyway, okay, so I'm going to ask you guys a couple questions that we get asked a lot, and so all of you guys have gone through the labor experience. So the first thing would be, did you have like any signs of labor coming, like, and what were they? Like, what told you? Did you have any a week before or a few days before? Did you have this gut feeling? Like, what told you were in labor before it really declared itself?
I'm gonna go first because I do have to jump off soon. But
Okay.
honestly, the first thing that happened is I got a really sharp contraction that I didn't know contractions were gonna feel like that. I've always just the way they are described versus what I felt didn't match. And then I lost my mucus plug almost immediately afterwards. And I had always heard like, don't rely on that because it
Yeah.
doesn't always happen. But it was
So
most, yeah.
I want to dive into that a little bit. So what did people tell you they would feel like, and what did it feel like?
I heard that it felt kind of dull, wrap around the back, like pulsating, radiating. Mine came very, very sharp and in the front. I don't know if that's because I'd had a previous C-section or just the way my anatomy is, but I didn't expect them to feel so sharp.
Okay, that's good, because I think that's good for us to all share what we felt, because I think it is a little bit different for everyone else.
Yeah.
And whenever you have to hop off, just leave the room. We will forgive you.
You're good.
Cassie's at work. So, all right. Anybody else want to share what they felt? Okay,
Yeah,
Laura.
I had it was 2 days before I actually delivered, and I just felt this like really deep cramp, like similar to Cassie. Like it wasn't in my back. It was very much so front and center, and it was a deep cramp, and then it was really sharp. And I'm like, huh, that was interesting. And my mom's like, what? I was like, no, that felt really weird. She's like, oh, maybe it's a contraction. I was like, yeah, right. And yeah, it was the start of everything.
I love that so much, because I think it also, for both of you, there was a little bit of an instinct as well. Like, I think this
Mhm.
is it. I love that. Anyone else want to share what they felt? Jessica?
So I definitely had a lot of pressure in the morning down in my lady bit. And just kind of like struggled with just feeling so uncomfortable walking and like just even getting up and moving around. So I spent a lot of time that day on my ball. Um, and then later in that evening, I had been for like 2 nights having like contractions at night before I went to bed, and then they'd be low enough that I could go to bed. But that night, when after the morning I had pressure, that night I started contractions and they just kept going up and up.
I love that. Ashley, do you have something to add?
I missed the question. Sorry, I had a blowout.
No problem. We totally get that. So the question was, did you have any signs, or when did you know like labor's coming? Like, did anything particular happen before the
So,
contractions really got regular?
not really. The Foley bulb is what really kick-started my
Well, that's right.
contractions.
You were an induction. Never
Yeah,
mind.
but I
She's
did
like,
I
wait.
did lose my mucus plug, which they don't it's the strangest thing. I didn't think anything of it. I thought it was just the normal discharge that you have, and they don't really, I mean, talk about it much, but I don't know, it was a really strange thing to lose.
All right, so that's a great one. Tell everybody what it looked like and what you felt like it felt like.
So it looked like snot, like just literally you just snot rocketed.
You're not one of the mamas who sent me a picture of
I was, yeah,
Okay.
I posted it. I posted it in the community. I was like, I don't know if this is my
I remember that.
yeah, because it was not a lot. Like a lot of women, I think, lose a lot at once, but I think mine was like kind of gradual. Because I lost a good chunk and then I would kind of lose some more, so it wasn't like all at once.
Yeah.
But it was very strange.
Yeah, I always tell people your mucus plug looks like snot or like egg yolk or egg white with like stringy blood or brown or yellowish. It's just a weird, like you're like, what just came out of my girl parts right here? Okay, next question. Did you have one beside okay, Jessica, not cesarean, okay? And none of you guys cesarean. Did you have like a weird, like, I hope I don't blank during labor? Anybody? All right.
I really didn't want to.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
hold on. Let's go with Laura since I already put her front and center, and then I'll go to you.
I'm sorry. Yeah, no, a lot of us probably have these moments of like, oh God, I hope I didn't. So for me, I was really worried that I was going to throw up. I was absolutely terrified that I was going to throw up because I was in the pool, like in this birth tub. And I'm like, that would be so gross.
Yeah.
So disgusting. And I'm like, nothing, no.
But you didn't throw up.
I didn't. They had a bottle of water, or a big pitcher of water for me. I had Gatorade, and then they gave me honey.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah,
Okay.
just to keep as
Keep you
much down
chubby.
as possible.
There you go.
Mhm.
All right, now let's get it. It was Jessica, right? That was or who was it? Who was starting to talk?
It was me.
Oh, okay, let me put you front and center now.
Mine was actually throwing up too, but I actually did.
So here's the funny part about throwing up. Your labor nurse gets super excited when you throw up in labor because when you throw up, it's exactly what you need.
Oh.
Well, we're on our own now, guys.
She said to stay on. I'll say I threw up a lot, and yes, my labor nurses were beyond excited that I was throwing up because it did help progress him down. But I hate it, and
It's
it's like
the muscle engagement, right?
yes,
Like,
yeah,
yeah.
and it was the worst thing. I hate throwing up, so I was like, I was not having fun with that. But the shaking that I don't think a lot of hey.
I keep having these random power outages, but I'm so glad I messaged all of you guys in your labor bat signal. Stay on. Don't get off. Okay, so what were we talking about while I was gone?
Puking.
Okay. Yeah, so what I was saying Oh shoot, I think my internet reset itself again. Are you guys there? I have a
Yeah, we can
feeling
hear you
I
now.
have a feeling that I don't know what's happening. I hope this stays on because I have a really fun question that I want you guys to answer for everyone. All right, so is everybody hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, hopefully, let me see. Let's see. I see someone said, uh-oh, in the chat room. Hopefully, this is actually working. Let me look on Instagram and make sure it's still going. Are you guys hearing me still?
Yeah, perfectly.
Okay, I don't know what's happening with the All right. We'll just not worry about that. Anyway, okay. So puking. We love it when you puke because it's the exact muscles you need to push the baby out. It's literally like perfect. So if I have a patient, I hate it for her and I've done it. When I had Ian, I puked during transition and I don't know what or how, but somehow it got in my hair. So here I am unmedicated in transition, head over the sink, washing my hair because the smell of it was making it even worse for me because it was right by my face. But yeah, that my transition was brutal. So, all right. So puking. So were any of you guys like really afraid of tearing? And what was your experience with that? Ashley?
So she doesn't really call it a tear. I don't even remember what she
Skid
called
mark. A skid
Yeah,
mark.
and it was. I mean, he wasn't. His head is pretty large. So that was my biggest fear, was tearing. So the second he came out and she was examining me and she was like, "You did great. Like, you didn't tear." I was like beyond excited.
Did you do anything to prepare for tearing? Like any perineal massage?
I tried it for a little bit and then I just didn't end up continuing it.
Yeah,
honestly.
it's not comfy.
No. But I do have to say, I think having the mirror helped a lot because I could see how I was pushing and what I needed to do to change it. And my OB and the nurses were amazing. And if I was pushing, like, not in my butt, if I was pushing any other way, they would immediately say, "No, push in your butt, push in your butt." And the second I would, they'd be like, "Yes, like that." And then I would like feel like, oh, this is how I need to push. And so I think that helped a lot. And my OB helped a lot with kind of him coming out, like kind of like preparing like everything for his head to kind of come out. So
hold on. I love that. Can you guys hear me still? Okay, I'm not trusting my internet right now. Okay, so what about pooping? Anybody? Were you afraid of that? Were you worried that you would poop in front of your partner or the team? Was that a concern at all? I'm trying to get us back on Instagram, but it ain't working. Who wants to go?
I'll say that was my concern too, but I did not because I was very constipated.
Nice. How about you, Laura? Laura, you want to share?
I'm just gonna casually throw me under the bus there. So I 100% pooped, and again, so I wasn't worried about it because again, it's a good indicator that you're pushing the right way and that things are progressing nicely.
Mm-hmm.
But being in the water, your poop floats. And yeah, so they had a beautiful neon blue fishnet to just scoop and poop.
And we'll just say that your husband handled it like a boss.
Yeah, he was in the tub with me. I think that guy deserves an award of some sort. Like he was extremely patient through the entire process, and
Yeah.
he dealt with it.
He does that. That is amazing because I have to say that like poop does not bother me as a labor nurse, but you guys who have hung out with me on happy hours know that I am a poop phobe. I will not myself. Like Steve has to go out the bathroom, out the bedroom, out the hallway, outside the bedroom, down the stairs. Like, and I turn on the sink, I turn on the bath, I turn on the fans. I don't know why. I think I was traumatized as a child or something. I don't know. But I am not that person who will just, go into the bathroom while my partner's standing there and start pooping. Not the girl. This is not me. So that was really one of my biggest birth things was I didn't want to poop. And then lo and behold, Miss Lainey Lou comes along and she's straight OP, which for those of you guys listening, she was face up. And when you have an OP baby, if there's anything in there, it's coming out earlier in labor. And my nurse was a brand new labor nurse. Had she been a seasoned nurse, she would have known, this girl's on Medicaid. This is baby number 5. She knows her body. But I'm yelling, I have to poop. And she's thinking baby's coming out. So she gets a bedside toilet. And I had to do big girl poop in a bedside toilet with everyone watching. And it was horrible and traumatizing. Like, it was horrible. I still don't forgive her at all. Like, I am salty about this. But anyway, anybody else, like, so Ashley said she didn't poop. But here's my thing for you guys who think you didn't poop. You probably did. That I always say, like, if there's anything in there, it's coming out. And if you have a good labor nurse, they usually get to it before you even know that it happened.
I watched it though. I could see it, and I could see I did it, and I watched the video back, and I did it.
Well, that's true. But some point during pushing, Mama, if there's anything in there, something will usually come out. Like it's just physiologically makes sense. Okay, what's another question? I had a list of questions in case I forgot what my question.
Can I add something real quick?
Sure. Yeah, go for it.
Because you talked about face up. So I do have to say, if you are able to move during labor, I mean, I moved even up until my epidural. And even then, I still moved like every 10 minutes because I was so uncomfortable. But he was actually face, I guess not breech, but like face up. And my nurse told me to get on hands and knees. And I was like that for as long as possible. And he ended up turning.
That's awesome.
So,
and were you on hands and knees before your epidural or after?
Yeah, I was on hands and knees before my epidural.
Okay, that's and you still can after, you guys. You can. Yeah. We have a lot of students that do it.
But that peanut ball during the epidural was a game changer. That helped.
Back when I had Lainey, because she's 17, we didn't have peanut balls. And my nurse was a brand new labor nurse. She had just moved over from the NICU. So she didn't know the old school tricks. What we used to do back in the day before the peanut ball came around, which was, only like 5 or 6 years ago, really got big. We used to bring, now imagine if you used a peanut ball. So Ashley did. I don't know if you did, Jessica. Did you, Laura? Have you used one? Okay. So imagine, if you will, what we used to do is we would bring the bedside table over to your bed and put pillows and a blanket on it, and then lay you on your side and put your leg up over the table, just like it was the peanut ball between your legs. And we would raise it up so it would open your legs more. But if, that's what we had to do, and it worked magic. But was it very comfortable? No, not very comfortable. And the other thing was, just to be this is what you could get if you join one of my birth classes. You get the real insider stuff. If we didn't cover all of her up, she's basically bearing everything to the world, because the table is holding everything open. So you had to be like, it was very tricky little situation, but it worked. And some doctors hated it. So we would kind of sneak around and do it, but it would get her to complete. And these were moms, same as the peanut ball. The peanut ball is magical. I've seen so many women saved from going back to the OR by using the darn peanut ball, which again, just proves if we had more patience during labor and allowed a woman the freedom of movement and the ability to just labor without rushing her or having a stopwatch, we would all, probably the majority of us would get there. But anyway, that I digress. So I'm trying to think of anything else. Well, how about for anybody, how would you describe transition? Like what was your experience with transition? Laura, you want to go?
Transformative. Like it was, sorry, I just realized what I just said there, but it was so cool. Like you get into this weird zone of, oh, this is really intense, like really, really, really intense. So I was in the tub when mine really kicked in because my water broke, and then that just kicked everything into high gear. And it was this deep, like in your soul kind of pressure. And it was so quick. It was just like, okay, you have a contraction right now, and then you can breathe a little bit. Oh, there's your next one before you were able to catch your breath. But I was in the tub, so I was able to sway. But every single time I was swaying back and forth, pretty much there was another contraction. And it was just this intense pressure in my pelvis. But it seemed so productive, and I was just so focused on it that it was manageable. And again, that was unmedicated. It was manageable.
Did you know in your head that it was transitioned? Were you able to like put that together?
Yeah. So because I was so late in my labor at this point, so I had been 8 centimeters and I had stalled, is what the midwife said, but I actually hadn't.
No.
So when the water broke and I could really feel the contractions pick up, there's that kind of mental note of like, okay, here we go. Like we're nearing the end, but it was just like, all right, it's game time.
Now, is it Ray or Ray? What's her name?
Raylyn.
Raylyn. Okay. Did Raylyn verbalize you're in transition? Did anybody like verbalize that to you, or were they just moving with you and like just going on the flow?
I can't remember fully. There was nothing that was obviously said to me.
Okay.
But there was a moment as soon as this happened that Ray just kind of went in front of me and held on to me. Um, and just held onto my arms and just took me through really deep breathing because I think she knew, like, okay, I need to make sure she stays focused and centered and chill.
I love that so much because that's what I teach in the coach class, is that during early labor, really their job is to follow your cues. Like, do you need to be distracted? Do you want to watch a movie? Do you want to go for a walk? What does she want to do? She's going to be able to verbalize, this is what I need to do. And they can do some massage and some counter pressure if you verbalize it and you need it. In active labor, they have to watch your physical cues and step in and, okay, is she really moaning and holding her back? Is she trying to squat? Help her squat, let her lean against you. And then in transition, the main thing that they can do is refocus you and remind you how powerful you are and that you're almost there. And for those of you who are coaches who are watching, this is why we have the coach class. But the number one cue is usually, like Laura's saying, if you're looking at the contraction pattern, it's this intensity, this boom, 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 boom. And before that, there's a calm. So it's kind of like a hurricane. There's the eye of the hurricane. So it will move over and she may slow down. She may have a break from the repetitive of the 2 to 3 minute contractions. She has the eye, and then boom. And then it's transition and it's hopping and it's time. Because if you think about it physiologically, the uterus is now bringing the baby out, down and out. So it's going to go into like an overdrive. But if you're watching her, there's usually an emotional change. Now, with an epidural, you may not always see that emotional change, but sometimes you do. She might start shaking. She might start being like, I am over this. Like, I'm done. I've heard epidural moms and unmedicated moms be like, I really just want to go home. I'm done. Like, not an option. You're not going home. I've heard them scream at their partner. They've suddenly like really, really like snappy at me. So what we were saying last night in our happy hour, which for those of you guys watching, our students, we meet on Mondays with our VBAC students, on Wednesday with everyone, and every other Thursday with our postpartum moms. But last night during happy hour, someone was like, or it was Taylor, our team doula. She said, what happens in transition stays in transition. So did any of you guys, do you feel like you said anything funny? I see one of our students in the chat room. Jenny, you need to come on with me next time for sure. She said that's exactly how mine was. Hubby kept telling me I was doing great. Yes. So tell me about your transition.
I definitely, during my transition, I kind of went to like a panic. And that's where like my husband needed to like really refocus me, because I was like, why am I doing this way? Like, I need to have a C-section. Let's just get the baby out of me. And he's like, no, you remember you wanted this. You wanted this. You've been fighting the whole time for this. And I'm like, no, it's done. I'm done. And he was able to like remind me like, no, this is the part that like is good. And then my water broke, and then it was like no more about the pain. And I just like constantly was like, I'm peeing myself everywhere. This isn't okay. Somebody needs to clean me up. And he's like, no, you're fine. So that was kind of my transition.
During transition, a lot of time you really forget everything you know. That's why it's really important to have a support person who can step in and redirect you. Like, it's just so important, because imagine if Jessica had been on her own and she hits transition and she's telling her team, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to do a cesarean. And they're not supportive of her vaginal delivery already. They've already been trying to, I'm just saying, they're already trying to push her into a repeat cesarean. And now she's saying she wants one. She might have ended up in the OR. And it's really stressful. That's really stressful. Ashley, did you feel anything? Like, do you feel like you knew when you were in transition? What was your experience with an epidural? Okay.
I definitely knew. The epidural itself, worked really well, probably too well because I kind of panicked, but I couldn't feel my feet and my legs. But he actually, because he was down so low for so long, it actually bruised my tailbone.
Mm.
And I was in excruciating pain within my tailbone. Like I could not sit, I couldn't lay like a certain way
Prior to labor.
prior to, well, this was like at, what was it? Um, at it was at 9 centimeters
Okay.
that happened.
So he definitely was a little wonky in there.
He was.
No doubt about it. Yeah.
Yeah, and
So-
he, because I stalled out for probably, I want to say 5 or 6 hours at like a 6, 7,
Mhm.
and then like another few hours at an 8. So I mean, he was low, and so my tailbone was hurting hardcore, and like I just immediately, like again, like you said, it was a calm before a storm. I was calm, I was like doing good, and then like the pain started getting worse and worse, and then I started shaking uncontrollably. And that's the one thing, like I just, I don't think that was the one thing I wasn't mentally prepared for, was as much shaking. Like I knew I was going to shake, but like
It's intense.
it's intense. It was more intense than I thought it was going to be. And then I started feeling really nauseous, threw up a couple times. And they ended up actually giving me fentanyl through my epidural
Okay.
area because the pain was so intense. Like I couldn't eat, like the breathing, I just couldn't do it anymore.
Well, and that goes with the fact that epidurals aren't always guaranteed.
Yeah. And
So
like afterwards with the pushing, like I could kind of feel the contractions. And I could just, again, the mirror helped me a lot with seeing where he was at, how long I was pushing, and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was really intense, really intense.
So Ashley was really surprised by the shaking. How about you guys, Jessica or Laura? Was there, before we head off, was there one thing that about your birth that really surprised you, that you felt like, okay, didn't see that coming? Go ahead, Laura.
So during that transitional phase, I was uh, when I was having my contractions, it was like I turned into like caveman Laura. Because my husband was trying to put counter pressure on my lower back, but by this point it was really uncomfortable if he did that. And all that could come out was Rick, no, Ray, yes. And it was, and I was very abrupt. So if anybody tried to ask me a question, I would be very, very blunt and short with them. But then that like 4 seconds that I had in between the next contraction, I was like, you guys are great. Like, you guys are awesome. And then just go
Yeah.
right back into the like, kind of
Caveman,
state.
caveman,
Yeah.
Laura. I love that. What about you, Jessica?
I don't know that I had any like anything necessarily. My husband told me I was very loud throughout all of my like contractions and stuff once I hit like transition, which was surprising to me. But then I lost my voice and I didn't
So
have
you
a voice.
were very
It
loud.
was. So I didn't have a voice for like 3 days after labor, and which was for me, like I'm a very like quiet person, so that
Nice.
was difficult. And knowing that like there was a lady at church that was also in labor that same night, and we had our babies like 2 minutes apart. So I was like, yep, I was that person on the floor.
It's so funny that you said that, because I can, like, it's so fun when you're sitting at the labor desk and you hear all the different noises coming. And what's really interesting is that birth noises sound just like sex noises. So it sometimes sounds like you're not at a hospital for labor and delivery. You might be somewhere else. So it could get very interesting, very interesting. It's funny, when you guys were talking, I just suddenly, Elias's birth just flashed back in my head. And he was a nurse delivered. He was number 3, and nothing was happening. Nothing was happening. And then all of it happened. And I've told you guys before, that kind of became my norm pattern. Um, But I had my mother-in-law in the room, my mom, my sister, and my ex-husband. And my nurse was like, so I had to go to the bathroom. So my sister, took me, but I had the monitors on. And my nurse and everyone else was in the hallway, and my nurse apparently was like, she's pushing, so she comes back in, she gets me in bed. My doctor had gone to lunch because I was taking so long. And she gets me in the bed and she's like, oh my gosh. So she's like, hit the call light to one of them. And then I guess my bag of water was right there holding him in. I don't remember exactly, but I think that's what it was. I'm laying in the bed. She's telling my sister to get in the drawer to get the amni hook, right? To break the bag of water. My mom and my sister are like fumbling. I literally leaned off the labor bed, yanked the drawer off, and went right there. And then as I'm pushing the bedside table, I think it was over here, I see someone hit my like really expensive camera and it goes to fall and I won't catch my camera as I'm pushing. I'm like, oh God, that's totally my type personality right there in a nutshell. But anyway, well, thank you guys so much for coming on. Hopefully I'll see you at the next happy hour. We've got a lot this week. And for those of you guys who have not joined one of our birth classes, join us. We would love to have you. All right, you guys, see you later. Thank you.